everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm honored to be here with you to present clinical engineering in support of the healthcare delivery organization's mission and vision. Your two speakers today are myself and Jessica Wright from Crothall. My name is Jennifer DeFrancesco. I am currently the Associate Director of the Dayton VA Medical Center.
And my name is Jessica Wright, and I'm the Unit Director for the Biomedical Engineering Services for Christus Trinity Mother Frances Hospital in Tyler, Texas, working as a contractor for Crothall Healthcare.
All right, so we don't have a lot of time with you all today. We want to make sure that you guys get a lot out of our short 10-minute presentation and our 5-minute Q&A after with you. So just the goal of this is to give some perspectives on how clinical engineers can really work with their executives within their healthcare delivery organization and provide overall better care for our patients and also better service to our administrators. So Jess and I are just going to go back and forth. We're going to talk through this from the perspective of a department head, Jessica, and then also a hospital executive, myself. So we're going to kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and we look forward to the ideas you'll bring also in the Q&A. All right, Jess, so I'm going to lob the tough one to you first. What do you think is the number one thing that hospital administrators need right now from clinical engineers?
So right now, at least from where I sit, the number one thing they're looking for is cost savings and also networking to expand whatever services we're currently providing. So a small version of that is, of course, anything to do with COVID. They're trying to cut back while also expanding the amount of patient care that they're providing. So it's sort of, you know, a two-sided street. And then the piece concerning also wanting to broaden our horizons and expand the services we're providing. They're really looking to build on top of whatever we're currently doing. So let's say, you know, specializing in certain modalities or using our broad spectrum of vendors that we have to, you know, better provide our in-house service.
I agree. I think, you know, from a hospital administrator's perspective, one of the things we're always looking for is efficiencies, you know, and solution-oriented folks. So clinical engineers really can, I would say, step up right now and help with that cost savings. You know, a lot of hospital administrators look at biomed as overhead. You know, it's not a revenue generating department, but you could obviously make the argument that it is, because if something's down, then you're not generating revenue. Right. So it's maybe a revenue mitigation department.
Yes.
So definitely efficiencies, definitely uptime. I would also add to that, you know, surge preparation. You know, one of the interesting things we're seeing is now COVID's becoming normal. You know, this is our new normal. And they're not shutting things down so that they can preserve also their money and things there. So surge preparation and whatever that looks like, and patient experience. You know, patients are going to come to the hospital they feel the most comfortable with.
Right. All right, so our next question here, and I'll direct this to you, Jennifer. What is the biggest long-term need for healthcare administrators and leadership from clinical engineering?
Yeah, I think the two big ones for me, you know, fall into sustainability in healthcare. You know, there is a lot, and I would say this post-COVID world that we're unsure of. Much more telehealth. Our consumers, we're seeing they want to get more care in their homes. So that's going to mean devices are going to look different and clinical engineering support is going to look different. A lot more maybe cybersecurity based or web based in terms of supporting those applications and things that clinical engineers may not be comfortable with, but will need to get comfortable with. I would say also really leaning into equipment reviews and healthcare technology assessments and that long-term planning and kind of pivoting with the strategic plans of the facility. You know, what does 5 and 10 years look like now in comparison to when they made those plans, maybe in 2020 or before then?
Right.
Jess, I'm curious, you know, you're part of an independent service organization. How do you think what healthcare administrators are asking of you might be different than an in-house program or even a consultant?
So I think a difference as being independent service versus in-house is, you know, they don't look necessarily at both sides of, you know, as we're an internal entity and, you know, it's all one giant revenue. We're an expense versus part of, you're saying, the overhead if you're internal. So I think the biggest difference is they're trying to cut, anytime you're a contractor and outside, you're seen as a vendor. And so they try to reduce those vendor expenses. So I think it might even feel a little more stringent on the side of being the outside versus internal.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. In COVID, everyone's looking at their contracts. Hospital administrators are always looking at their contracts and seeing how their contracted expenses add up to those others in hospital compare in like organizations. So as an independent service organization or as someone contracted to do the service, I would say it's probably a bit more scrutiny than maybe an in-house program with that. And then also, interestingly enough, even though times have been tight, I've seen quite a few organizations leveraging consultants and being willing to pay that upfront money to say, what do we do here that might save us in terms of change management, strategy in this new environment that we may not be 100% aware of. And so I think that's also a place where clinical engineers could come up and say, hey, this is a service, or we could provide this consultation for you and you don't need to hire someone from the outside. And that could also be possibly a cost savings.
Mm-hmm. So the next section is, we're wanting to know what's the biggest change in healthcare delivery that we see coming in 2022, which, Jennifer, I know you definitely already touched on with the in-home care, as well as, looking into the future of what we can do remotely and what we can help with the cost savings. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that piece?
Wow. I feel like 2022 is just such a year of challenges and opportunities. Again, we're starting to see the trends where instead of shutting down, people are continuing operations as usual. And COVID is going to become another thing like the flu that we deal with, whether it be seasonally or intermittently or on an ongoing basis. So I'd say really keeping up with the healthcare trends and thinking, what is healthcare really going to look like this year, next year, 5 to 10 years from now? Even really thinking about, what does the workforce in healthcare look like? Who is actually sitting at the facility? Who is working remotely? And even clinical engineers working remotely and having some people on site or troubleshooting remotely. Lots and lots of things are on the table in 2022. And our consumers, the people who are consuming our healthcare are really going to have a big part in shaping that. And it's really yet to be seen whether we'll have a bounce back of then kind of a normalization of more people wanting to come into the hospitals versus how they feel now. So it's really going to be an interesting year. I think it's a year for clinical engineers to read a lot, to keep up with current events, to see what's happening not only in their country, but in other countries, and to really think through and synthesize and be those thought leaders of what does this look like moving forward. How about you, Jess? What's your biggest challenge of 2022 going to be?
So 2022 for us, we're expanding. I know even, with surging, I think the hospitals have really started to pick up on, just seeing in times of crunch and crisis, how they could expand, on short-term notice. And I think they're really starting to roll and embrace that and lean in to say, hey, this is huge opportunity for healthcare. So I think, rather than even in the decline of COVID, they're still trying to say, this is something sustainable that we can actually build an infrastructure around. So that's what I'm seeing is a big healthcare expansion for 2022 all around.
Absolutely. I agree. And possible mergers and acquisitions as well, which, yeah, that's a whole nother portion. So I think, before we wrap up, my biggest suggestion to clinical engineers to best engage with their healthcare leaders, their executive team, their administrators right now is to really listen and understand what they need help with. So continue doing the great work we always do with PMs and equipment reviews and all of those things, but lean in and say, where are the pain points in the organization and where can I truly find value, and do a lot more listening and synthesizing than saying, oh, I want to do this for you and therefore it's your solution. So that would be my advice for clinical engineers in the next coming year.
Very good suggestion. All right. So in conclusion, thank you guys so much for, stepping in and listening to our discussion. We're looking forward to having our Q&A with everyone and dive a little deeper into any of these topics.
Thank you.